Labor and pensions will please come to order. I'm usually on time, especially for an education hearing, and excuse me for being late. This is the first in a series of hearings as we finish our consideration of proposals to reauthorize the Higher Education Act. Today, we're looking at ways to simplify the free application for student aid, or FAFSA, to make it easier for students to apply for federal financial aid. Senator Murray and I will each have an opening statement, then we'll introduce the witnesses, and after your testimony, senators will have 5 minutes of questions. There's a lot going on today in other committees, so senators may be coming and going because of the tax bill. Nearly 4 years ago, at a hearing before this committee, an unusual thing happened. 4 witnesses from diverse backgrounds agreed that almost all of the 108 questions on the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, are unnecessary. The FAFSA is the government form 20 million families fill out every year in order to qualify for the $140 billion in federal aid that helps nearly 20 million students attend 6,000 colleges and universities. Senator Bennett and I have spent a lot of time holding this up in the air to let people, remind people of all these questions, even though most people fill it out online, there's still the same number of questions. At the end of the hearing, I asked the witnesses if they could summarize their proposals to simplify the FAFSA in 4 separate letters to us. They said they could do it together in 1 letter. Senator Bennett and I then had the same reaction. If there's that much consensus on how to make it easier for nearly 20 million families to apply for federal aid, we ask, why don't we actually do it? Well, that was 4 years ago. So Senator Bennett and I set about to turn 108 questions into 2 on a postcard that Dr. Scott Clayton, who is here today, recommended in her testimony 4 years ago. Let's take a moment to talk about why simplifying the FAFSA is important. First, nearly 20 million students fill out this form every year. This means if you receive a federal grant or loan as a freshman, you'll have to fill it out again to continue to receive your aid for sophomore year and beyond. While experienced financial aid officers tell us it doesn't take long to complete, we've heard over and over again from parents, students, and higher education officials how difficult it is the first time. Second, this complexity frustrates the goal of the Pell Grant, which is to help low-income students attend college because it discourages them from applying for aid. I know in Tennessee, where 2 years of post-secondary education is now free, the complexity of the FAFSA is the single biggest impediment to more students taking advantage of what we call Tennessee Promise. The former president of Southwest Tennessee Community College in Memphis told me he believes that he loses 1,500 students each semester because of the complexity of the form. Third, this complexity wastes time and money that could be better spent helping students choose the right college or major, or develop financial literacy skills so they can understand the impacts of taking out student loans. After 4 years of discussion over how to simplify the FAFSA, it is time to come to a result. Our first order of business after the first of the year will be to mark up a reauthorization in the Higher Education Act. My central focus will be to make it simpler and easier for students to apply for federal aid and to pay their loans back, and to cut through the jungle of red tape that federal law and regulations imposes so college administrators can spend their time and money instead for the benefit of students. We have a number of bipartisan proposals before the committee that seek to do those things. After our hearing 4 years ago, Senator Bennett and I, along with Senators Burr, Isaacson, Senators King, and Booker, introduced our legislation to cut the 108 FAFSA questions down to 2 questions. We have listened to students, financial aid officers, and college presidents. We have done this in a bipartisan way for 4 years. We'll hear some of those good ideas today. For example, Senator Murray has a bill to simplify the FAFSA process for homeless students and students without parents. We worked with the Obama administration to allow students to fill out the FAFSA with their tax information from 2 years before they enroll in college instead of 1, so they could file in the fall rather than having to wait until the spring. The result of all this is that Senator Bennett and I are now completing work on a bill that would reduce the FAFSA from 108 questions to as few as 15 and no more than 25 questions, depending on how you answer questions about your family. We will do this principally by taking the tax information that Americans give to the federal government and incorporating that tax information into the FAFSA. Over and over again across Tennessee, I've been asked, if I've already given my tax information to the federal government, why do I have to give it again for the FAFSA? My answer is that you shouldn't have to. Once is enough. Our proposal will also tell students the amount of their Pell Grant, money they don't have to pay back, before they apply to college instead of after they have already been accepted to schools. I have a long perspective on this. As Education Secretary, I oversaw the implementation of the first FAFSA in January 1993, shortly before I left office. While the FAFSA is a complex form today, it was actually created then to reduce the burden on students by combining federal, state, and institutional-based financial aid applications into one single application. The first FAFSA had 4 pages of questions and 12 pages of directions. Today's FAFSA is 10 pages with directions included on the form, plus an additional 66 pages of instructions. Now, 25 years later, I sit here as chairman of the Senate Education Committee trying to update the Higher Education Act and once again simplify how students apply for federal financial aid. Over the next couple of months, I want our committee to listen to the experts, discuss different proposals, and write and pass a final bill. 25 years after the first FAFSA and 4 years after the first hearing, it is time to bring this discussion to a result. We should be able to say to the nearly 20 million families who fill out the FAFSA, instead of answering 108 questions, you only have to answer about 15 to 25. Once is enough to give your basic information about family size and income to the federal government. And instead of waiting until you've been admitted to college, we'll tell you about your Pell Grant while you're still shopping around for schools. Senator Murray.